Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. Thank you for tuning in once again, because quite frankly, you could be listening or watching a whole lot of other folks, but you're here with us. And for that, we are grateful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss not nan episode that we drop, because we keep coming every single week with the strongest content that we possibly can to help you do what we set out to do, which is to help you take dominion. And we don't want you to miss out. So make sure you hit that subscribe button right away. Today's episode is a topic that we need to talk about. We talk about these student loans because they're crazy. They're out of control. They're handcuffing people. They're holding back generations because it's so easy to get into and so hard to get out of. And so we want to give you some wisdom, some practical advice, maybe for you, maybe for your kids on today, because if it is something that's already a part of your life, you can be the one to pivot and get it out of your family legacy from this moment forward. And today, to help us with this topic, we got a very special return guest to the His and Her Money Show, Christina Ellis. She knows all about this. Why? Because, man, she had like $500,000 worth of scholarships herself that she went to school with. And she spent the last 10 years or so helping other people do the same and understand that you can go to college, graduate without the burden of debt. So we're going to get her here to help us all get a little more educated on the topic at hand. So let's get Christina on so we can hear all of her practical wisdom and advice on this matter. Hey, Christina, welcome back to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're glad to have you back in the saddle. Your story is amazing. The work that you do is amazing. And so we know that our audience will once again benefit from all that you have to share with us. But, you know, some folks didn't hear you before when you came on, so they're being introduced to you for the first time right here and right now. So can you say hello to everybody and then let them know what you're all about?
Yeah, hello guys. Thanks for being here. I'm thrilled to talk to y'all. Student loans, it's so stressful right now. I feel like every time you turn on the news, there's some type of article, there's some type of video about the stress around student loans and when they're going to restart. And it's kind of chaos out there and students are feeling really overwhelmed. So I'm just excited to talk with y'all about this and hopefully reduce some of that anxiety and give y'all some tips for either, going to college debt free or paying off student loans wherever you are. My journey, it started back my freshman year of high school. My mom, she actually sat me down and said, Christina, I love you and I believe in you, but there's just no way that I can support you financially once you graduate from high school. So you're on your own for college. Now, at first, I was kind of shocked. I thought, why are you telling me this? I am a freshman in high school. What can I do about it? But at the same time, I knew she was just trying to be real with me. My dad, he actually passed away when I was 7 years old after a long and painful battle with brain cancer. My mom, she was an immigrant from Venezuela and she was doing her best, but the reality was she didn't have the money to send me and my brother through college. So she was really trying to challenge me to figure out a way to do it by myself. She had worked so hard to get to this country and she wanted to see us succeed. So she told me about scholarships and really encouraged me to start doing research to figure out, how could I stand out in the process? What could I do? And so I got really hungry for it. I started reading every book, every article, every resource I could find about scholarships, trying to figure out what can I do to stand out in the process. So then I put together a strategy and I implemented it throughout high school and just worked hard to build up my resume and stand out in the process. Then my senior year of high school, I treated the scholarship application process like a part-time job. I just applied. And thank God it paid off. I was able to win over $500,000 in scholarships and go to college completely debt-free.
So dope, man. I'm curious because I've heard your story before, but hearing it again, it sparked a thought. Um, for some, the thought for a parent is, I don't want to hurt or hinder my child's potential to advance, and I can't afford to send them. So let me find out about student loans. Your mom said, I don't want to hinder my child's progression, and I can't afford to send her. So let me tell her about scholarships. Where do you think your mom got that idea from? Because when you went to college, student loans were what was pushed. It was becoming more easily accessible than a generation, a few years prior when I went to college. Student loans was not, as shoved down your throat as it is now. So where do you think your mom got that forethought not to just say, hey, they got these student loans and that's a way that you can go, but instead she put a different seed in you to say, start thinking about scholarships as a way to go.
Yeah, well, thankfully, she was an immigrant, and in a sense, like, there was a lot that she didn't know, and what's funny is freshman year, people have often been like, "Oh, were you super determined to go debt-free?" And it's like, "Yes," but it wasn't really in the context of, like, avoiding student loans because, honestly, I didn't even know about student loans. Like, I don't think my mom really knew about student loans. I think we both thought when we started this journey that if I didn't somehow come up with the cash, then I couldn't go to college. Like, I think that that was kind of the place we started in was we just didn't really know any better. We thought that like if we wanted to go to college, we had to somehow figure out a way to pay for it. And so thankfully, that was kind of the way we started. And then come senior year, when they did start pushing loans on me, it's like I had already ingrained in my head that I was going to get scholarships and I was going to go debt free. At this point, it's like debt free. But at that time, I was just trying to raise enough scholarship money and I felt like I could do it that it was like, oh, no, I don't want student loans. Like I could actually pay for this with scholarships and avoid that completely. So thankfully, that's why I encourage parents to have conversations about money early on because it's like I know it can be kind of intimidating. A lot of kids don't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it my freshman year. I was kind of resistant, but I'm thankful my mom had the courage and the drive and the push to have that uncomfortable conversation because it's like she instilled this desire to pay for it with cash, with scholarships before I had some student loan officer at a college saying, "Hey, this is the way you should go. This is easy. Like, don't worry about it. Like, we've got this money that's cheap and easy." And it's like, that's not true. I had a different belief before that.
So now here we are in a situation where there's something like $1 trillion worth of student loans out there. Can you help us understand? Because I think that because so many people have student loans or know people with student loans that we don't see just how big of a detrimental impact our society is facing currently when it comes to the topic of student loans. Just do you have any insight on how dire the situation is right now?
I mean, it's terrible. Like there was a study that came out recently that said that 93% of people don't feel like they'll be able to resume payments on their student loans and 27% of people don't think they'll ever be able to restart. So it's like these numbers, the anxiety around student loans starting again, like it's just crazy. People are really feeling the heat and feeling the impact and we see so many studies coming out saying that people are delaying major life decisions like getting married, having a child, buying a house because they feel the weight in the pressure of these student loans and they think they can never get out from under them. One of the things we teach here is getting rid of the student loans. So right now the government is saying push it off, like, and there's all this confusion about forgiveness, but we're all about controlling the controllables. So we want to encourage people to get free from that weight and to get free from debt. We have the 7 baby steps and we encourage people to pay off debt using the debt snowball. And it's really cool because a lot of the people who go through the program pay off all their debt in 18 to 24 months. So I just want to encourage anyone with student loans, like you don't have to live with this forever, even though, society kind of tells you like just this is it and you're gonna have to feel this weight and this burden for a really long time. I just really want to encourage you that you can get rid of it and live your life with financial freedom.
And one of the things you said was there's a lot of confusion around forgiveness, student loan forgiveness. Can you offer some insight on where you see people because you do this work for a living around this topic? Where are people confused? What should they know? What should they be more clear about when it comes to forgiveness?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is the government keeps going back and forth right now. Like, there's just not a lot of clarity and forgiveness. And I think there's been a lot of promises that have been made and a lot of promises that have not been fulfilled. We've seen that with public student loan forgiveness, I think only 2% has been forgiven thus far. So a lot of people who counted on this forgiveness have not received it. And there's been a lot of red tape in the process. People went in thinking, I'm doing all the right things. And then maybe they got switched to a different district as a teacher, or maybe they got laid off. And it's like, wow, I did everything right, and then something beyond my control happened, and now I'm not going to get my loans forgiven, and that's crazy. So I think there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of broken promises, and now I feel like it's a carrot that's been dangled in front of people, and it's hard because we don't know what's going to happen. Um, and it's just I think people are really stressed out about that. So that's again why I try to encourage people to go to the controllables. Like we can't control what the government's going to do. We don't know if they're going to actually forgive student loans. So I just encourage people to take advantage of this pause because while interest isn't accruing, this is the best time to be paying off your loans. You can make the most progress during this time.
Now unpack that because we've said that on our platform, but maybe you can expound a little bit better why with this pause is this an opportunity for people to have a greater impact on their student loan debt?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your payments, when it's not in a pause, when it's not in this specific pause, so much of your payment is going towards interest. We've talked to people who like most of their payment is going towards interest. Right now, that is not the case. Like if you make a payment right now, that is going directly to principal. That is going straight to reducing this overall debt. It's been crazy. I've done some student loan coaching calls recently with people with six figures in student loan debt, and they've just talked about and told their stories about how they made payments, they did the minimum payment throughout the year, and somehow their balance just keeps growing. It's because they had these crazy interest rates, and so much of that minimum payment is just going to interest. But right now this is a chance to actually get ahead, to knock down that principal and make your payment just the most effective it can be.
What do you say to people who feel hopeless about their student loan debt? I've heard people say, I'm just going to take this to the grave. There ain't no way I can get out of this. And it varies from amounts. Some people with 30, 50, some people in six figures worth of student loan debt. They just feel despondent. They feel hopeless. And they just feel like this is like the Apostle Paul. This is just going to be the thorn in my side for the rest of my life. It's nothing I can do about it. How would you speak to that?
Yeah, I know a lot of people feel that way and it's overwhelming. But I go back to, we've seen so many people pay this off. We've seen people with six figures in student loan debt pay it off and do it and get free. If you're feeling that way and you're feeling really discouraged, I encourage you to watch The Ramsey Show. So we're on every day from 1 to 4 Central Time. And once an hour, we have people come on and do their debt free scream. And it's so inspiring and so cool because you see people who have been in super crazy amounts of debt and they've put in the work and they've paid it off and they're standing on the stage telling their story and then screaming out at the end, "I'm debt free." And it's just so amazing and powerful because it's like, wow, these people have hustled and grinded and they did what they had to do, and they're standing there in a completely different disposition just saying, wow, like I don't have to worry about this anymore. So I know it's so hard, and again, like we're seeing study after study about people, putting off these major life events and feeling like they can't move forward. And this is just something they're going to have to carry around forever. But we're also seeing all these people who have tackled it and made it happen. So I just really encourage you to choose that spot of hope and be willing to put in the work. And even if it is a lot of work. So baby step 2, we have the 7 baby steps. Baby step 1 is save $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step 2 is paying off all your debt using the debt snowball. So this phase of the baby steps, it's not always the most fun, right? But it's just a season. So if you go in and you go hard, you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. You may have to get a second job. You're going to get on a budget. You may have to really cut back on your expenses. But again, if you go all in, if you get super intense, you can knock this out quick, or at least a lot quicker than what the government programs have signed you up for, which for a lot of people, it's 10, 20 years. You can knock this out way sooner than that.
What would you say to parents to help them realize, especially if they have student loan debt of their own, that they should make it their business and their priority if they have high school or junior high age kids to start talking to them about college now, like your mom did, and help them to avoid being saddled with student loan debt like they may be faced with right now?
Yeah, well, I try to talk to anyone who has student loans right now and is mad about the toxic culture and the way the system is set up. Become an advocate for the younger generation. So I have people stop me all the time and say, Christina, I just wish that someone would have talked to me in high school about college and going debt free and told me that I could actually win scholarships. Like so many people just didn't have that conversation and they weren't set up for success. So I encourage anyone who has student loans and they're mad about it to be an advocate for younger kids and help them realize that there's a different way. Share your story, share your experience, and counteract those people that are saying, oh, just take out a bunch of debt. It's no big deal. Like you'll be able to pay it off with a great degree you get. Tell them your story and tell them, that it wasn't that easy and maybe what you would have done differently and what you wish you would have known early on. So we have a documentary called Borrowed Future, and I'm super proud of this documentary because it's been an awesome resource for me to share with kids. And it basically exposes the toxic student loan industry. It shows how the system is really built to work against you, and it also shows how you have the power to beat the system. So I love using this as a resource with kids because it's like it speaks right to the heart. It's got stories in it of people who were basically told, take out student loans. This is the way to go. And then it shows them as adults and, the consequences and just the way it actually feels paying it back. And I think it's really eye opening because it's like, okay, wow, this isn't that easy. But it also has debt free stories where it's like it can be done a different way.
And how do people get access to that documentary?
Yeah, it's on Prime Video, Apple TV, and Google Play. And if you're a teacher, you can watch it for free. Go to borrowedfuture.com.
Nice. All right. So now, when should parents start these conversations? Is it freshman year? Is it seventh, eighth grade? Like, what's your recommendation? When do we start having these? Hey, kids, we need to start looking at scholarship talk. Does it start with the scholarship talk? Does it start with, thinking about careers? Like, how do we start to turn our kids' minds in this direction? And about what age do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as possible. Obviously, depending on the age, depends on the conversation you have. But early financial literacy is so great. We always encourage people to start talking to their kids early about money. It doesn't necessarily have to be college or scholarships, but talk to them about how money works, how budget works, how different things in that space, how it works. Have those conversations. And then usually around middle school, I like to recommend that parents start talking to their kids about college and scholarships. That's the time to start thinking about classes and extracurricular activities and just kind of what that's going to look like as they go into high school. And then freshman year is where I really encourage people to get intentional about those conversations about college. So start talking about scholarships in college. And it's not so much that you need to be thinking about applications at that point. I feel like sometimes people go, "Oh, start applying for scholarships freshman year," and then they get really focused on that, and that's not really the primary focal point at that point. I want you to start thinking about, what do you want your high school journey to look like? What kind of things can you do to stand out in the application process? So, if you spend, the first 3 years of high school really building up your resume, you're going to have so much more to talk about your senior year whenever there's the most applications available, whenever you're applying for college and a bunch of scholarships. So, you know, freshman year, start having those conversations about class schedule, what kind of things you're going to be doing throughout high school, extracurriculars, how to build up that resume and work hard on implementing that throughout high school. And then senior year, go all in.
And now, if this is like a foreign topic to some, they're like, okay, that's interesting, and they're like, okay, well, are there certain activities? Are there when you say start thinking about classes? Can you unpack like how are we talking to our kids about classes or activities? Are there some that look better on resumes than others? I mean, you've been doing this for 10 years, so like for those parents who will be navigating this conversation for the first like that, you just said something that was like, oh, well, I better get on this, and but they don't know, how to navigate that conversation with their child, but they want to. What are just some tidbits that you can give them on that?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is, help kids lean into what they love. So a lot of times people think about scholars and they think like, oh man, to win a scholarship, you have to be the star athlete, you have to be valedictorian, class president, like these specific set of things. And I always encourage people like, no, it's about finding activities that your student loves and then helping them lean into that. So I always talk about like your resume is built around two basic ideas, range and intensity. So range, it's the amount and variety of activities you participate in. And intensity is the depth in the level of involvement that you have. So you want to participate in a good variety of activities, but you also want to have activities that you go deep in and that you're really involved in. So encourage your students to be active and try different things. So, especially freshman year and maybe even in middle school, start trying different sports, different activities. What kind of things do they like to do? What interests do they have? And then as you get into high school, really start leaning into those activities. So, try to take up leadership roles, try to, see if there's different ways that you can lean in farther, maybe take extra classes on a certain topic or, get extra tutoring, but just, try to figure out what are those things that you really want to lean into and build up so that you kind of stand out in the process. Another thing that looks really awesome on applications both to college and for scholarships is volunteer work, which I love sharing that because it's like some people think, well, I'm not a star athlete and I don't really have any super amazing talents, but everyone can volunteer. And when you think about it, scholarships, they're given away by people who have a heart to give back by helping students. So it makes sense that they would value volunteer work because it kind of shows that their investment is going to pay forward in the world. Like if they invest a scholarship in someone who loves to volunteer, then that person is more likely to continue giving and volunteering moving forward. So that is definitely a really awesome way that people can stand out. And even within that, something else that stands out in the application process is leadership. So, one of the ways that I really stood out whenever I was in high school was I created a shoe drive that sent shoes to countries where people were dying from parasites entering their feet. And it was a volunteer project that I created. So it looked, very interesting that I had the drive and initiative to create it, but it was something that I really loved doing and just really enjoyed doing that to give back. And it's something that anyone could do. Anyone could create that type of project. It wasn't that I had some super abilities. Any kid could do that and stand out in the process. So finding those things that you love and really leaning into them can help so much.
And how important is it for parents to really cultivate a relationship with their kids' guidance counselor to help navigate this journey as well?
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, definitely leaning into that relationship is great, especially when it comes to the scholarship application process, because one of the best places to look for scholarships is with local scholarships. So the connection to those local scholarships is the guidance counselor. A lot of times they're not listed in the big databases. So if one of your somebody a local community member creates a scholarship, a lot of times they're going to try to connect with that guidance counselor. So you do want to make sure that you're staying in touch with them, stay up to date. I know some guidance counselors complain that like they'll send out emails and no one checks the email, but it's like they're full of all these amazing local scholarships that don't have a ton of competition. So really make sure you stay on top of that. Now, a lot of schools, their ratio of students to guidance counselors, it's like 1 to 400. So a lot of times these guidance counselors are pretty stressed out. So I encourage parents and students to have a lot of grace with these guidance counselors, especially, a lot of times these guidance counselors are going to be writing a recommendation letter for college. So whenever, you're interacting with them, be kind, be empathetic, because there's often a lot on their plates. And if you do show that respect and, that initiative, they can be such a great connection to help you find scholarships and in the application process.
And you mentioned the word databases. There are databases of scholarships, but I mean, are some better than others? Because I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you Google, like you see some stuff, and you're like, is this real? Is this possible? Is this like something somebody just threw up to try and get my information? So what's your thoughts on the databases that are out there and finding ones that are legit and, generate some sound opportunities?
Yeah, the scholarship search, it actually can be one of the most frustrating parts of the process because there are tons of scholarships out there, but finding the best ones for you can be tricky and challenging. So there are a ton of scholarship databases. These are basically scholarship search engines. It's where you go and you can enter in information about you, your sports you participate in, what type of clubs or groups you do, volunteer work, your future career. And they search through several scholarships to match you with scholarships that specifically fit you. So that's the idea behind them. Now, sometimes they can be frustrating because you'll enter in information and you maybe aren't matched with a lot of scholarships that you actually should be matched with, or you get a bunch of kind of spammy scholarships or sweepstakes scholarships. So don't just take the list that they generate from one scholarship database and say, this is exactly what I'm going to apply for. I usually recommend that students use like 5 scholarship databases and then have their lists and compare and contrast them to create a list of scholarships that really seem like the best fit for you. I know that seems kind of complicated and it's like, oh, why can't we just have one spot? And, we're constantly trying to talk to scholarship databases and see, which ones are the best ones and how can this process improve. But for now, I just encourage people to really take the time to create that list because even though it can be a little bit frustrating on the front end, once you get that solid list, you can just start knocking out applications and, really moving forward on that. Also, a lot of people, kind of feel like, oh man, like this application process, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to apply for a bunch of them. They have essays. But what's cool is like once you've applied for a few scholarships, you can actually recycle a lot of your application elements. So, like the essay, for example, I know is a frustrating factor for a lot of students. They're like, oh, I hate writing essays. But if you have about like 5 or 6 really solid essays, a lot of times scholarship programs will ask similar questions. So you can just kind of have those 5 or 6 essays and recycle them for different applications, kind of tweak them and adjust them to fit the answers. So the application process really does get easier as you go along.
So now you hear the terms scholarship and grant sometimes used interchangeably. Can you break down the difference between them? And is it the same process to find a grant as it is a scholarship?
So grants are typically based around financial need. So students will be required to fill out the FAFSA if they want to be eligible for financial need with the school or financial aid with the school, which I encourage everybody to really apply, even if you have a higher income, because sometimes people are surprised. There's people who make well into the 6 figures who still apply, who still are eligible for financial aid. So make sure to fill out the FAFSA. And grants are usually what come with that financial aid package. You might get a federal grant, you might get a state grant, and you might get a school-based grant. Now, scholarships, that's typically a different application process. There are some scholarships that are merit scholarships that are given through the school. So if you go to a school's financial aid website, a lot of times they'll have listed their automatic merit scholarships. So these are scholarships that are based on your GPA and your ACT or SAT score. And this is really helpful, especially if a student is a really competitive applicant. I really encourage them to, in their search process for a college, look at that part of the website because you may find, hey, I have a 34 on the ACT and a 4.0. And it's like at one school, you may not get a lot of merit scholarships, but you may get an automatic full ride if you're able to get admitted at a different school. So that's a really cool thing. Not everybody has perfect grades. I speak to a lot of students who don't have perfect grades. I didn't have perfect grades and test scores, so that was not the route for me. But if you do happen to have really strong academics, make sure you check out those automatic merit-based scholarships that's at the school because it can be one of the easiest ways to win scholarships once you have those grades and test scores. And then outside scholarships, those often require separate applications. Like we said, you can go through the scholarship databases. Some databases that we recommend are Scholarship Owl, Scholly, CapEx, Unigo, and Big Future. Those are some great places to start. If you Google scholarship databases, there's several blog posts that have a huge list of scholarship databases. So again, try to find like 5 of them, and try out different databases to get your list created. And then I still recommend, as basic as this sounds, like a good old fashioned Google search. So I usually have people write down their unique qualities. So write down activities that you participate in, maybe types of volunteer work that you do, clubs you're involved in, maybe your future goals, and then go into Google and do a targeted search. So let's say you want to be in STEM. You could do scholarships for STEM majors, or if you're a runner, you could do like runner, comma, scholarships. And a lot of times those will generate really great search results that go directly to the programs giving away the scholarships. So create that unique list of activities and then dig into what search results are available.
Now, what if my kid is not a straight A 4.0 student? Are there still scholarship opportunities out there for them?
Yeah, there are. And that's one of the things I love talking to people about because it's like, when people are giving away scholarships, anyway, anyone can give away scholarships. So, like, I've literally seen scholarships from people who had C averages in high school, and then they wanted to give scholarships away to people who also had C averages because that was their experience. So, it's like anyone who has money can technically create a scholarship. So, a lot of people create scholarship criteria based on similarities to maybe they had in high school or what they felt like was missing in the scholarship application process. So there are scholarships out there for you, even if you don't have perfect grades or test scores. And again, it goes back to that search process and why it's important to spend time in the search process because you want to find those ones that specifically fit you. And also, there's all sorts of like really niche scholarships. I think it's really fun that there are scholarships given away for like being tall, being short, for being left-handed. I think there's a vegan scholarship, there's a vacuuming scholarship, and there's a zombie apocalypse escape plan scholarship.
Okay, super interesting.
Right. They're giving away for almost everything.
Okay, so we got work to do. Now, bring some levity to how we should have a mindset with this process, because I believe I heard you say that it's like for the research says that maybe 1 in every 10 scholarships that you apply for, you get. So there has to be, some effort into it. And you have to have an understanding that, you know, you're going to experience more no's than you will get yeses, but to not give up. Can you speak to that, to the parent and that student that will be going through this?
Yeah, the application process can be competitive. There's a lot of people who want scholarships, and there's not scholarships for every single person. So yes, it's often a numbers game. That's why I recommend people apply for a ton of scholarships. Like, if you can apply for 100 scholarships or more, that's great because, yeah, I saw a study recently that said, like, people win maybe 1 in 20 scholarships. So people could be frustrated and say, I applied for 40 scholarships and I've only heard back from 1 or 2. And I'm like, great, you're right on track. And I know that can be kind of frustrating, but in the long run, like let's say it takes you 2 hours to fill out an application and you win $1,000, that's like making $500 per hour. So it's like in the grand scheme of things, like that's a lot of money, but I know in the moment it can feel kind of frustrating. So it's like, and again, as you get to recycling, it could potentially take you, an hour or two to fill out a scholarship application for $10,000. And it's like, that's pretty awesome when you really think about it. And when you think about the contrast of paying off student loans and how much it would cost you in real wages to pay that off, it's like that effort is worth it on the front end. And again, so actually, one of the things I also want to make sure we highlight is that scholarships are great. That was my route. That was my journey. But there are other ways to go to college debt free. Like I really encourage people to take student loans off the table, but then also explore all of your options. So there are options like maybe working through college. Something I'm really excited about that seems to be growing in popularity in the last couple of years are these tuition assistance programs. So there are a ton of companies that are starting to offer free college in exchange for working for them either part-time or full-time. So companies like Starbucks, Chipotle, Walmart, Disney, Dollywood, they've created these programs where people can get a debt-free education while working, which is amazing because they can literally earn an income and be going to college for free, which is cool. Graduate debt-free while making money, while paying for a living wage. I think that's just awesome and kind of part of the wave of the future. So there's that. There's college selection. Make sure that you don't just get your eyes locked on one really expensive school. Maybe you can go to a community college for free to start with for 2 years if your state offers that, then transfer to a 4-year school and cash flow that. Maybe a public college in the area is cheaper. So just keep your options open and explore all the ways to go debt free.
Now, you just hit on something that's I think is important, and I really, really want you to give your wisdom on because I don't know if you know this, Christina, but there's a new wave going on social media right now where you have college signing day. That used to be just exclusive to athletes deciding like which school they was gonna go play for, but now it's everybody, and so parents are posting. My son, my daughter is going to such and such, and there's this social pressure now you just threw out there like don't just try to go to the name brand big price tag school, especially if you don't have the money for it. Maybe consider community college and maybe consider a school that doesn't cost as much. But there's this social pressure that's a real thing, and when college signing day comes around, you want to post a nice little post about your son or your daughter and this fancy school they're going to. Help us realize how that can possibly do more harm than good.
It's a real thing. And it is, yeah, it's painful and it's sad to watch because, especially when on the other end of that, it equals years of student loan debt for the kid and years of pain as they try to pay that off. It's really hard. And I hope that we here at Ramsey and me doing this mission, we can kind of create a new wave in a culture where it's like debt free education is actually way cooler, where it's like there's kind of like a bragging right and going, yeah, well, I got this education and I got this degree and it's debt free. And what's crazy and like what's so hard about the prestige and that social pressure is in reality, when you walk around most corporate environments, you'll walk up to two desks right beside each other, and one person will have gone to an Ivy League school, and the other person went to community college and then transferred to a public school and went debt free. And guess what? They have the same job. They're working the same job. That's just like, whoa, like that other person, if they did it debt free, great. If they could go to an Ivy League school with no debt, awesome. More power to them. But if they had to take on student loans to do it, if they had to be weighed down with debt to get the same job as somebody who went to a public school, that's really hard and frustrating. And so it's like we really do have to break the stigma and the social pressure because the end goal is ultimately to have a great career and to have freedom.
Yeah. I know people are going to have a lot of follow-up questions for you, so let them know where they can find you on the internet if they want to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, you can find me at I am Christina Ellis on Instagram. That's I am Christina with a K Ellis, and that's on Instagram. And you can also go to ChristinaEllis.com.
We'll be sure to have links to where to find Christina, as well as all the fantastic resources that she mentioned during this interview. Christina, as we get ready to close this out, help the person listening right now with their full attention on you understand that if they have student loan debt, they can get out of it. And they don't have to pass that same burden on to their kids. They can make their kids' future a different reality than they faced when it comes to student loans.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it all the time. We see people get rid of that weight. We see people get rid of that burden. So it can happen for you too. But the biggest thing on both sides of the coin is intentionality. So make that choice, make the decision to pay off your debt, to get free from the debt, and be intentional with it. Get on a budget, follow the baby steps, and work your way through paying off your debt. And then with your kids, be intentional about exploring all options for college. Don't get your eyes so focused on one option about the comparison. Don't get your eyes focused on the comparison, the Instagram comparison of college signing day. Explore all the options out there. Maybe it is going to work at Starbucks and getting a free education. Maybe it is going to community college first, but be very intentional about exploring all the options that are out there and ultimately making the best choice for you and your student.
Man, good advice. Thank you so much, Christina, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come by the His and Her Money Show and drop some knowledge on us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show is in the books. We hope you took good notes. And like I said, everything that Christina mentioned, you can find in the show notes of this episode if you're listening to the podcast. And if you're watching us on YouTube, just look right underneath the video in the description box and you will find all the links there. Student loan debt, it doesn't have to be your reality. Even if it's your current situation, it doesn't have to stay there forever. You can put in the work and get it out of your life. And you can also make sure that it never enters your children's life either. Let's do the work necessary to change our family tree. You have what it takes, and we hope that now you have some information to help you make that knowledge a reality. That's all we got for this time, guys. It's been great. Until next time, peace.